and welcome to today's class on Shmiras HaLashon. We are in the next gate, Shar HaTvuna, the gate of discernment or making decisions between things. Excuse me, it is still the frozen tundra that is Washington, D.C., through which we must trudge through this unseasonably cold weather and be warmed by the fires of the Torah, hopefully enough to warm the area and make it safer for people to be outside in general. Having said that, we are in chapter 3. Chapter 3. I think if I wrote chapter 2, please excuse my error. We are on chapter 3, and we are going to discuss other ways to guard our tongues, other suggestions for making sure that we steer clear of terrible sin of saying nasty things. So, if a person, so the Chafetz Chaim begins, if there is such a person, or if one is such a person, if one is one who has some type of concerns about their own nature, and they don't want to be overtaken by silence. So he previously recommended that silence is a great thing, good thing. When in doubt, don't say anything, because he's just a person who's got to talk about stuff. He's into pop culture. He doesn't say pop culture, but I'm translating it loosely. Got to talk about things going on in the world for their own good. Such a person. They shouldn't talk about other people. Let things be as they are. Okay? Now, except for, you can talk about the people for sure that are sort of stepped out of the realm of appropriateness, and they begin to deny Hashem, and they trespass and say nasty things about the words of the rabbis of the Talmud. For such people, it is a mitzvah to humiliate them. And we wrote that in Sefer Chafetz Chaim, section 8, halacha 5. Okay, so there is an exception. A person is allowed to talk about and gossip about those who are basically destroying things in our world. That's not gossip. Okay, they're not considered achicha in such a case. Okay, so you can talk about them, and you can say how terrible they are and what terrible things they do. And if it should happen, that was a sort of a side note that the Chafetz Chaim mentions. This should it happen that you're talking about somebody who's not one of these people, it has to be short and purposeful. And don't start talking on and on about the whole thing. So that way you're not going to say something you shouldn't be saying. And he says, I heard such a thing from Rabbi Rafal Hamburger. Okay, Rabbi Rafal, who was a rabbi from Hamburg in Germany. For 4 years before he passed away, he decided to retire from his rabbinic position. And people would come to him. He said, I don't want you to talk about anybody else. And he said, I heard this as well about another very famous rabbi in my generation that also is very careful to say, don't talk about other people with me. And it's all for the same reason. Meaning, when they were a rabbi, I'm here to complain, right? Reuven and Shimon come there, and they're going to complain about Levi and Yehuda, right? Don't bring that stuff to me. I'm retired. I don't want to hear it anymore. Okay. And then furthermore, you have to also be careful that you shouldn't talk about a store owner for their business, or any type of craftsman about their craft. Because when you talk about their craft, it's usually because you don't like the job that they're doing, and it sounds like you might be saying something you shouldn't be saying. And how much the more so if it should happen that you have some type of animosity between you. So therefore you shouldn't talk about it at all. And so too, you shouldn't also say too much praise in their presence either. That's also no good. Because the rabbis say in that really long Gemara about Lashon Hara, Arachin 16a, that a person should not say too much praises of their friend, because in the course of praising them, they're going to somehow embarrass them. And we explained that in Chafetz Chaim in the first section, rule 9. Check it out. And even simple things to say that aren't really, necessarily destructive things or too praiseworthy. Really, you should say not too much, because nonetheless, maybe if you don't like the guy, you're gonna say something that you shouldn't be saying, especially when it comes to saying something about this, and we apply to something else. That a person should try to not dwell too far into discussing it, and you could eventually, something could slide out, even if you say it, even just sort of say it kind of sideways, halfway out of your mouth. And if a person is talking about something that they need to talk about, they should try to be brief and make the point. Because if you're not doing that, you're for sure going to speak Lashon Hara. Because the dust and ashes of the fire that burns is impossible to be completely and utterly put out. Okay, so that's those little bit of animosity you bear, that little fire that burns inside of you. It's gonna leave a little bit of a smoky smell on the things that you're saying, is how I describe it. Now, you're talking about Ruvain. You're talking to Ruvain, and you're talking about Shimon. And Ruvain doesn't know that you don't like Shimon. And in the course of the conversation, you sort of give out a feeling, a sensation of how you really feel about that person. And through that, Lashon Hara is going to accrue. And if you don't have another way to get about it and to get around the conversation, and to maybe even drop the conversation altogether, then change the topic of conversation. So too, if it should happen that you begin to speak and you start to feel yourself as you're ending your statement, that you're going to be trapped into saying something not nice about a person, and any other things like that, then you should actually restrain yourself to fight with this inclination to say something that you don't absolutely have to say. And in the in the course of delivering this conversation, you should also try to change the topic so that you don't get stuck fomenting anger about this other person. Okay, so too, like if someone's talking to you while you're eating, and they kind of abruptly interrupt you, and you kind of spit something out. So even whatever was in your mouth, okay, and you something that would be really embarrassing to see if that were to happen. So the rabbis say, this is in Adios 5:6, that a person should rather be called crazy in their entire life, and they shouldn't even be wicked for a moment. And the Ramban says this as well in the book Sha'ar HaGemul, the gate of bringing things back. Or Sha'ar HaGemul is to repay. That he's talking about being repaid through our mitzvos and our averos, our the things that we do good, the things that we do bad, and in talking about the punishments that we get in the next world, that even a moment in Gehenna, in the place that we know of as hell, where their fires burn to purge the soul, it's so much worse than anything that Eov experienced his entire life. And it should be known that a person who seeks to be even more humiliated would not be able to humiliate somebody else, or they would rather suffer an embarrassment and not have to take such terrible physical traumas. And we say this if there's no other way out of it. But if people will listen to you and you can make peace, it's a mitzvah to make peace and say why you should make peace, especially when we're talking about it. And then there's no issue. Right? You can say, I know what the problem is. It's this problem, right? Here's how we can resolve it. So we should also be careful that we should not be in the company of other people, and no matter what you need from them. And frankly, you should try to not be around them too much. If you don't know them, or if you find that by being amongst them, they're going to say prohibited things. And even if through all of this in this group, they are really actually good people, and there's just one person who's a bad apple, who's a not such a good person, he's going to ruin the whole bunch of you. And really, you should then walk away. If they keep him in the group and he's not doing better and he ruins the whole thing, walk away from him. And it's much more important to hold on to the personal the personal trait of being silent as much as you can. And I actually found this written in a book known as Rosh Hagiv'ah, and I quote him as follows. This is what the Chofetz Chaim says. Person should be just like Shlomo HaMelech said they should be. This quote is in Mishlei, in the book of Proverbs 23:9. That one should not speak into the ears of the foolish, because such a person will not understand the smart things that you have conveyed to them. And so too, when you're in a group and there's going to be, let's say, 100 people, and there will be maybe amongst them one person who's an idiot, or one person who is just unbearable. And so too, the person who is wise in his own eyes, and in truth, he's an idiot. And the one who says that the one who's wise in their own eyes is really a fool. And so they should go ahead and sit in silence and not speak of anything in such a matter. Okay, in any large party. So should they say some type of wise things and they feel like they're being successful, and really what they're going to do is make things worse. So the opposite happens. And for this, Shlomo HaMelech already said in the book of Proverbs 11:2 that the worst things can happen. That when they do something bad, the worst can happen. And if you even want to say something with him or the other friends who are there, you should be careful not to listen to what this person who feels wise in their own eyes is saying, even if you have been super careful to filter out what it is that he's saying. Because it says that in the ears of the foolish, one should not even speak. So don't even be an earshot of them. It doesn't say don't speak with them. It means don't even be an earshot. Don't hear what they have to say. And that seems pretty straightforward. That we've tested this numerous times in any big family event. And I find this to be true, says the Chofetz Chaim, that people will leave an event because there's just that one person who insists on saying the not nice things. And he ruins the whole party. Why? Because he refuses to be quiet. And everyone else there will be quiet and will be happy. That's what he says. If this happens as a guest on a Shabbos table, is it not the responsibility of the host to tamp down on Lashon Hara rather than leaving it the discourse in the meal? Oh, hold on, I lost the rest of that statement. Come back. Okay, so that's a good question. Who has the obligation to basically tell people to be quiet when they're speaking Lashon Hara? There's the host has one, but every individual technically has one. You have a mitzvah of tochacha. You should do it well. But what we see from over here from the Chofetz Chaim is that your best bet is not to say anything to him, but rather to get up and leave, because they're not ready to receive. If they're not ready to receive, then giving them a rebuke is not going to be receptive. So you have to rather just be quiet. And what you do is you continue to broadcast good behaviors and say, you know what, I don't like this conversation. I remember one time I was at a shop stand, and some guy goes, I don't like this conversation. And I looked at him and I go, I mean, you don't have to have it, but there's nothing wrong with it. The fact that you don't like it doesn't mean that we all have to change the conversation. It's, as long as the conversation is a kosher conversation, continue having it. To say, I don't like this conversation. What don't you like about it? That in and of itself is Lashon Hara. Literally saying, I don't like this conversation. Okay. So, the Chafetz Chaim is recommending over here is that a person should conduct themselves to never be around people who behave this way, and don't look after all the things that they're trying to transmit, and all their news, and conduct yourself slowly, that you should not want to hear the news from them, until you'll find that over time God will help you, that you will find a new personality trait of being a natural tongue guardian. All right, his words are Shmiras HaLashon b'teva, a natural tongue guardian. Okay, that if a person would want to conduct themselves this way and try to violate Lashon Hara and something like that, a person should be so weirded out by that experience that they will find it to be completely foreign to their own speech patterns to say such a thing. And really, the truth is that we've tested this out in numerous situations, that guarding one's tongue from bad speech and tilting one's ears away from hearing bad things should not feel like it's such a difficult thing, but should feel like something that's happened over the course of a few weeks. And after you have seen what people do to conduct themselves, and that there's a certain person who likes to say Lashon Hara, and you're staying away from it, and you're not hearing it, and they're continuing all types of silliness and all types of forbidden things, that you yourself will refrain from saying such things, even to that person, and you'll never talk about anything with that person, and especially when it comes to coming even close to being Lashon Hara. And he can go take his news that's nothing but Lashon Hara and tale-bearing, and he can go sell it to somebody else who's going to buy it. Because you personally, being a master of your own domain and taking control over what you speak about and what you hear, he'll see that he's not gaining any traction and any more attraction from you. It's not getting the attention from you that he's seeking. And he'll consider that and they will learn from that to see that is because they are someone who regularly engages in Lashon Hara, and so on. And since they're never careful about guarding themselves from hearing anything, the problem is when they talk about a certain activity that goes on, they should stay away from it, and they should not talk about it, and they should guard themselves in case they ruin themselves through hearing these things that this person is trying to sell in order for them to find buyers, right? He's using a mushal. That you're trying to get this story out there so you get the attention. It's much like someone who's trying to sell a product and they want you to pay attention to buy it from them. And that's why they continue to do these things. And so a person, in all truth, should try to stay away from this as much as possible. Because we learn in the Gemara of Moed Katan that one who takes care of their paths in this world will see the redemption that Hashem has playing out for them in the future. Let's see how we're doing on time here. I wanted to get through 2 today. Let's try it. We're going to try it. I think this next section is short enough that we can get through this. Okay, so this is section 4, where we'll talk about how great a person is who judges their friend favorably. So now that we're going to say only good things, you should only say good things about them and always think favorably of them. Because the rabbis say in Shavuos 30, and it says that you shall judge your friends favorably. That's quoting the verse in Vayikra 19:15. And also it says the Gemara in Sanhedrin in 32, that you should always judge your friend favorably. And this is one of the most important things that can be done in this world, because when you engage in it, it fructifies your olam hazeh, and it also saves the principal amount for olam haba, which is the Gemara in Shabbos. And we say that every morning by Berachos Torah. So what is chaf sechus? Asked the Chafetz Chaim. What that means is that you're able to say something or do something or demonstrate something that this would be the truth about it, or that there was an error, that things occurred to somebody, or you don't know why somebody did something so terrible. And even if it comes clear through all the ways in which you wish to examine the thing, you should consider the following. Perhaps something wasn't clear to them, or maybe there's something I need to add to the whole story a little bit. But every little thing that's added or subtracted, is not going to actually make it worse. So therefore, the rabbis say in Avos, do not judge your friend until you have reached their place. That's chapter 2, number 4. So that's what chaf sechus is. So therefore, you should see that in this case of the Gemara, which is in Shabbos 127b, that a person would learn the best thing to conduct themselves, that they have to judge everyone favorably, and even if it's such a way in which you're meriting them, in which you are meriting them, or being or crediting them with a lot of merit, seems to be a bit of a stretch. The Gemara says the following: the rabbis taught, one who judges their friend favorably, they are also judged favorably. Because that once happened with a certain person who went from the Upper Galil, and he came and rented a house in the south for 3 years, and right before Yom Kippur, he was trying to go get paid. And the guy says to the employer, I would like to get paid, and I want to leave. This is right before Yom Kippur. I will take care of my wife and my children. He says, I don't have any money. All right. So the worker says, I'll take the fruits. I have no fruits, he said. I'll take some animals. I don't have any animals. I'll take some blankets and some couches. I don't have that either. Okay, so the poor guy, he's going home for Yom Kippur. He takes what he has with him, and he goes home, and he's very sad. And after Sukkot, the Baal Bayis shows up to his house and has a parade of stuff to give him. Okay, with a whole bunch of stuff. He's bringing 3 donkeys or 3 asses, because the donkeys are too small. These are pack animals, so it's the Asiatic ass. And he gives him lots of food, and he gives him another one with lots of drinks, and he does other types of sweet fruits, and he brings to this guy's house. And after they sat and enjoyed a full meal after the holiday, the homeowner says to him, no, when I said to you, ich hab nicht, I had nothing, right? I had no money. What did you think about me? The worker said, maybe you had some type of cheap products to buy, and you threw all your money into it. So when I said to you, I give me an animal, I had no animals, what did you think of me there? He said, well, I figured maybe you rented all your animals out. How about when I said to you, property, and I said no problem. He said, I assumed that it was mortgaged to somebody else. And how about when I said to you the fruits? What did you think about me? He says, well, maybe they didn't have time to take Truma and Meister on it. What about when I said to you, I don't have any blankets and mattresses? What did you think about me then? Oh, I thought maybe you just gave all of your stuff to heaven and it was getting dedicated to the temple. He says, oh, that's exactly what happened. I went and I dedicated all of my stuff for my son Hyrcanus. And that way, who never learned Torah, and when I came by my friends in the south, and I didn't want him to get anything from me. I had to let them come and release me from my vow. And you thought only the good about me. May the ever-present one, meaning Hashem, judge you always favorably. And the Gemara brings this in so many other cases where you could judge favorably, and teaching you specifically how to be such a favorable person. And based on the way that person conduct themselves in this conduct, Verbatim question: what do you think of this person? Answer: nothing I would be comfortable stating. Period. Yeah, you could say that. What do you think about this person? Now, it should be noted that that's assuming that they're not coming to you asking for advice before they could potentially suffer loss. Those things are discussed more in detail in Chafetz Chaim. If they just want the news about them, that's one thing. But they're coming to you because you have specific information about them, right? Like, let's say you know that they steal stuff and other such things. That type of stuff you can reveal. We're wrapping up this section here quickly. Okay, so what we're saying now is to wrap this all up, based on a person who judges others favorably, and they won't say anything nasty about them, unless, again, he's not saying this, is that there's some type of purposefulness, purposefulness in relating to it, and there's seven conditions for toelas, okay? But you are not going to say Lashon Hara if you're always judging people favorably. So that's why a person should strengthen themselves in this personal trait of just saying that everyone can possibly do good, because through that and through judging them favorably, and the opposite way, God forbid, that a person should find that it's impossible to say anything nice about somebody else or to someone that is righteous or wicked in this world, that a person's own obligations and their whatever is being credited to them meritoriously based on the mitzvahs they've done and all the sins for all the bad things they've done, which Chazal say in many places is that if a person is only doing the good things, they are definitely a tzaddik. If they only do the bad things, definitely a rasha. And the rabbis say, this is in Rosh Hashanah 16b, that there are 3 books open on the Day of Judgment. Okay? And that's while people are still alive, Rashi explains. And the fully righteous get written and sealed immediately for living in the world to come. The wicked get sealed immediately because they have so many sins for destruction, right? They are sealed for Gehinnom, for punishment. And then there's the middle people. And the middle people, they kind of have things that are good, And, if they are pretty prevalent, just like the sand of the sea. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to be perfectly strict on them, everything gets destroyed. No one would be left, right? And so therefore, we always are assuming that Hashem is looking at every little detail and all the other possible aspects and all the little different ways that you can approach it for every single mitzvah. And even those people who really, we see that by the strictest of judgments, that such a person should never have any type of love or any type of awe and have no type of joy that would be appropriate for doing mitzvahs. So those people would have a real problem. The general rule is that Hashem, were he to be as strict on you as you would think he would be, especially after you've done your mitzvah, and it finds that there's so many things wrong with it, and really the actual mitzvahs are found to be the smallest of the small against the sins that you've done. And a person should see through this that they've really been sealed as a wicked person forever. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't do that. And he's so kind to us and always looks to find the good things in everything that we do. We should find that only the good things are really meant to be left behind. And more so than that even if we were to go ahead and look at the things that we do, and there's so many sins, nonetheless, we see that Hashem goes ahead and treats us with such mercy, and it's so much so that it reduces the number of people who would be considered fully wicked, because that's what he's trying to do, is trying to find all the best things from a person in order to cover up the sins that have been done and not make them look as if they're as bad as possible, or that perhaps that they were done erroneously. We're assuming the following thing, that were Hashem to go ahead and look through every single person's every single mitzvah, and we're to weigh them against every single avera, we wouldn't have this world available to us, because no one would be found to be righteous in the strictest of judgment. So with having considered all of these things, that the way in which we conduct ourselves throughout our lives with other people, that if a person were to be super strict with judging people, really what we should do is to judge them more favorably. And that's how we would want the conduct done with us, just like Hashem judges us. If a person is to constantly say that people are doing wrong things and say nasty things about them. So therefore, even the accompanying angels of God are going to start to say such things about that person as well, because we see that in the Gemara, in the Midrash itself. Therefore, a person should always conduct themselves all the days of their life that they should always be favorable to their friends, whether it's for their own benefit or the benefit of others. And therefore, as they speak about things, they should always say the nicest, they're always the kindest in their judgment and assessment of others. And we will pick up next time with the mitzvah of Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. What a wonderful, wonderful mitzvah. Thank you very much for joining today. We will see you next time.